Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hailey. I'm the owner of Xoxo Charley, a small business based in Nebraska. And today I'm going to take you along for the process of bulk prepping my upcycle collection for markets. So unlike what I've done in the past where I bulk prep a certain quilt or two quilts and I put them on the website for you guys to shop, these are all going to be available at my markets this fall. So junk stock, love the locals, and then a couple more into the winter. Ever since you guys really enjoyed these, I wanted to have a couple available at my markets, and I don't have a lot left from those collections that I published online, so I thought why not bulk prep 3 more quilts, and that's what we're gonna do today. In this collection, I plan to make some wallets, some tote bags, some pencil cases, some makeup bags, a little bit of everything, kind of like what you've seen in the past in our upcycle collections. So let's just get right into it. Here are all of the quilts that we're gonna be upcycling. We have 4 in this frame, but just ignore that one on the very far right. I ended up not going with that one just because of how many holes there are in it. I decided it wouldn't be good for this collection. So starting off with our very first quilt. This is our first one that we're going to be upcycling. This is a beautiful rose kind of checkered pattern. And the first step to upcycling these quilts is measuring them and planning out how many products I can make out of this quilt. So our first quilt, this rose quilt, it measured 82 by 82. So we had an even square to work with. And from that, I measured we could get 6 tote bags, 6 weekender tote bags. So I just got right to cutting those. And throughout my whole planning process, I use my journal. I just write everything down, all my different sizes. And it really helps me along the process to write down the sizes of my products specifically. So if I'm making weekender totes, large tote bags, mini tote bags, makeup bags, it helps me to be able to write those down, and then it's really easy to calculate how many different products I can get out of that quilt, because otherwise you can like overestimate in your mind. It just gets really confusing. So I write down everything into my journal, and then I can use that throughout the whole process of upcycling to remember, okay, we're making 6 weekender tote bags. So I just got right to cutting up that quilt. First off, I cut off the edges just to get rid of those and potentially use them as straps. And then cutting into the quilt, I cut along the lines that are already there. So I made sure to make even number of squares per side of the weekender tote bag. Then moving on to our second quilt, this is a beautiful double wedding ring quilt. It has a very stark red color, and then it kind of fades off into some blues and greens. It is just such a beautiful quilt. And our second quilt ended up being 73 by 59 inches. And for this one, it was just easier for me rather than writing down the certain products, but this one I made a picture of it. And so if you've ever thought about upcycling a quilt, try drawing a picture of your quilt. It helps you to be able to see all the different strips that you're cutting out, all the different products, and it just helps you visualize on your quilt where you're going to be cutting it. Otherwise, you could cut that quilt and then you're like, oh, I was not supposed to cut right there, which I have done in the past. And it's not fun because then you got to completely change your plan. So for this one, it worked out perfect to do different strips down the entire quilt. So I cut those out. And from this one, we're going to make a lot of makeup bags. It just worked out better for the measurements to do a lot of makeup bags rather than tote bags. And I really enjoy this color combination for makeup bags. I think that they would just bring a nice pop to the booth. So we're doing lots and lots of makeup bags for this one. And last but not least, this gorgeous star quilt. This one ended up being 62 by 79 inches, and from that we're going to do 3 mini tote bags, and then we're also going to do one size of a tote bag that I don't really sell online, but in this case I'm just going to call it a regular tote because it's in between size mini and size large. And for that one I ended up cutting off the edges as well, and then cutting into the quilt, following along those lines that are already there from the different patches on the quilt. And from this one we'll also have some makeup bags as well. I was really sad that I didn't have enough quilt from the rose one to make some makeup bags as well, because I thought that would be so gorgeous, but I promise you the tote bags turned out just beautiful. Step 2 of this process was slicing them to size. After I cut those main slices out of the quilt, I like to bring it onto my cutting board and use my rotary cutter to cut the exact size that I need for both the tote bags and the makeup bags. And this part is when it's really nice to have a huge cutting board. So mine is a 36 by 24 inch Fiskars foldable mat, and then I also use the Fiskars 60mm rotary cutter. If you guys are interested in getting these, I'll link them down below. They're also in my Amazon storefront. And then I just use a clear 6-inch ruler guide on top to measure out where I'm cutting. And this is the step where it's really nice to have a plan in my journal for what products I'm making, what size I need, if I need straps out of that quilt, because now I just take every single slice, cut it to size, and it's just really easy. I really don't have to think during this whole part. Now here you can see I'm writing down in my journal all the different products that we're making, just so that once I get to the fabric store, we know exactly how much of the liners we need. Otherwise, I've made this mistake too many times, and you can see right behind me, I have bought way too much fabric for liners, and then I get home and I'm like, what was I thinking? What kind of measurements was I doing? So I made sure to write everything down so that we can plan out how much yardage we need. But before I went to the store, I tried to look through my entire stack here and also my bolts of fabric to see if I could use any of that fabric as the liners and straps before I just buy any more fabric, which I did find a couple. I found this beautiful pink and white stripe and also the purple gingham, which I use in the purple wildflower makeup bag. And I also found a beautiful mauve from a previous limited edition collection. I saved those 3 fabrics for liners. And then it was off to the store. I ended up finding a couple fabrics that I enjoyed, but overall it was so hard to find a fabric for that double wedding ring quilt. I don't know what it was, but that one was so hard to shop for. Mainly because the tones, I like to go for more pastels, more lighter colors, and that one was such a bold accent color on the quilt that I just could not match it and like how it went together. So I ended up going with this really light pink. I also picked up some pinks and greens for that rose quilt. And then a lot of the fabrics that I used for that star quilt I already had at home. So the purple gingham, pink and white stripe. And then I bought some plain pink and plain purple. And on here, I'll just show you, this is kind of how the yardage looks for buying all the different yards, just how I plan it out. I numbered it 1, 2, and 3 so that I can match it to my previous page with what quilt I'm referring to. And I just write down every single fabric that I'm getting and how many bags I'm going to be making out of that certain fabric as the liner and the straps. And then I also made note if I already had the straps at home, so some of them I'm using straps from the quilt. I got this idea from a previous quilt that I upcycled that I really enjoyed using the quilt as the straps. It just matches so well, obviously. So then this way I can just add up the total inches that I need for each bag. Then over on this side, I just wrote down how much exact yardage I need, and then I could tell them at the shop, okay, I need 2.5 of that one, 1.75 of that one. It just makes it way quicker. And as far as once I got home and cutting out all those fabrics, I wrote down liner, strap, outer, and pocket. And this, I just put little check marks for when I actually cut them out, because if you've ever dealt with this much fabric before, you can understand you kind of get lost. And when you're not dealing with the same fabric throughout all of them, you have 3 different outer fabrics, you have 9 different liners, you've got a bunch of different straps. It can get a little confusing. So I wanted to make sure, since I got the exact yardage, I don't cut that out wrong. So that's how I keep track. I just put little check marks next to the certain fabric and how much liner, strap, outer, and pocket I need. So I just got right to work cutting out all of those liners and straps and the pockets, and the yardage worked out perfect. And thankfully I got the right number of yards. And here's the final look of all the different fabrics cut out and in their little bundles, and it was off to cutting the pellon for the straps. I really enjoy putting pellon in my straps now just to give them that extra durability. I just like that extra plush that the pellon gives the fabric. So I cut all those out for the straps and started ironing on that pellon into the strap. After that, I got to ironing all the pockets that are going to go on the inside of all the tote bags. And this step is really not necessary, but I just enjoy that nice clean look for when you're sewing it. It's just always better to just press it and just be sure that everything will stay in place. And then it was time to fill all the different bobbins. I did end up picking up 2 different thread colors, purple and green, to match the liners. And this step has become crucial while creating different collections, is because I want those threads to match throughout the bag. I don't just want the whole thing to be white. I know a couple of my first collections I did white throughout the whole bag, and it just looks a little bit off, especially when it's like against a really dark, bold color like a green or a purple. So I filled up those bobbins. I also filled up some white, and I traded out my current foot for my walking foot. I talked about this in a previous video, but this walking foot has been life-changing to sew my straps. Walking feet are really good for reducing puckering, and that's specifically what goes wrong when I'm sewing them with my regular foot. So I really quickly just changed that out and started sewing all those straps. And the nice part about this walking foot is that it literally walks on top of your fabric. It has little feet on the top of it that will move the top of your fabric in addition to the bottom at the same time. So your fabric is being fed through very evenly, and you're not gonna get any dragging on the top of your fabric like you would with your regular foot while sewing these. And when they come out, they've just got that beautiful stitch on them, no puckering, they just turn out so great. So I went through and just sewed all of our straps, just both sides, and then onto the pockets. Also, a huge thank you to one of my viewers who sent me this little thread cutter. I usually use it for my pins because I don't have another pin cushion by my sewing machine. I've been using the magnetic side of it for a really long time, but recently I switched it over to be the thread cutter, and it has been life-changing for bulk prepping. I used it recently on my bulk prepping for Kindled book sleeves, but now for these pockets, it's really easy to just go along and push down the two pockets onto that, and it just cuts the thread right away. And this is just for efficiency, just makes it so much quicker to go through and bulk prep everything. Then it was off to sewing the quilted straps. For these, I was really glad that I had the walking foot because these were a real learning curve, I'll just say that. For this, I sewed a really good portion of it together, good sides together, and then I left the very end of it open so that I could flip it. But this didn't work out very well. It was maybe 5 to 10 minutes worth of time just flipping one strap. So I definitely needed to cut them wider. That is something that I learned from this process. And since I didn't cut them any wider for my following bags where I also had quilted straps, I just sewed them bad sides together just to start. And I just folded it on itself so that there wasn't any raw edges. Really quickly, I just had to cut a couple more labels, which I will have a video coming up very soon on how I make my handmade labels. But now I just got to work on adding our liners, our zippers, and our labels to all of our different makeup bags. Now for those straps, we had a little leftover pellon outside of them, so I had to cut those, and I also had to cut them to size for the tote bag. So all the tote bags are gonna have non-attached straps, and what that means is they are attached to the bag, but they don't go all the way down the front and the back side of the bag. They just stop right at the rim of the tote bag. So for these straps, usually I just sew them as one strap and then I cut them in half. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm cutting off all the different ends and chopping them in half. And then I was off to pinning those straps and the labels to the outsides of the tote bags. And while I was doing this, I thought, why not experiment and try and make a smaller rose tote bag? Since all that I'm making is weekender tote bags, why not just cut one of those halves in half and try and make a really small bag? So that's what I tried. So this is me just sewing the straps on, sewing the pocket onto the liner, and all that I did was I cut one side of it in half, and that is what I'm making into the whole tote bag. And let's just say it turned out not my favorite. It definitely needed some work, but I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. This is how it turned out. Looking back on it versus when I just got done making it, I think it's cuter. And I did make another one because I had the other half of the weekender tote. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think of this size? It is a little bit longer. And for the second tote bag, I didn't make it so deep. I made the corners just a little bit smaller so that it's not so deep. It's a little bit more of a shallow tote bag, so it sits up next to your arm a little bit better. But after that, I just got to sewing all of our straps and our liners and our labels onto all those different tote bags, just working my way through the whole pile. Then on to day 2. I started off the morning by sewing our wallet and our 2 pencil cases from the Star quilt. Then I just got right to work on our huge pile of tote bags and makeup bags. We had in total 10 makeup bags, so those took quite a good chunk of the morning, but eventually got through all those and I started flipping those tote bags and pinning all of those together. This part is where it's really crucial to have the correct top thread, the correct bobbin thread. Otherwise, the final bag is just not gonna look as neat as I want it to be. So it's definitely a more tedious process of switching out the thread every single time that I'm starting a new bag, but in the end, it was definitely worth it. Then a little later into the night, I just finished up those makeup bags, adding all the bias tape onto them. And the following morning, I got to cutting all those threads, flipping them right side out, and making sure that there was no holes in them. And here is all of our completed makeup bags. They are so adorable. I'm so glad how they turned out. And then here's how all the tote bags turned out. I absolutely love all the different color combinations and how well those quilts go with the size of the tote bag. I really try to prioritize how the design will look on the final product. So the rose quilt turned out really well with the weekender tote bags. And I love the regular tote and the mini tote for the other two quilts. But all in all, I'm so proud of how these turned out. I think people are gonna love them at market. I also really enjoy a lot of the tote bags that have their quilt straps. So I use the quilt as the straps, and I think it really adds like a cohesive element to the tote bag. And just how adorable are the little makeup bags. I think this one is probably my favorite with the little pink stripe down the middle of it. And for the makeup bags, some of them have different liners. So this one has the pink and white liner, which is so cute. I almost want this one for myself. And then for this quilt that was really hard to match in the fabric store, I ended up going with that really light pink for the liner. And this is the only liner for this quilt in the makeup bags. As for the little keychain wallet, I love the little florals and pink and white stripes on this one. And of course, for the liner, I had to go with the little pink and white lines for the inside of that keychain wallet. And here are the two little pencil cases that I can make from the double wedding ring quilt. And for the liners of these, I went with that very light pink, same as in the makeup bags. And after a couple days, all these quilts are upcycled into amazing products that so many people can enjoy at the market. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please let me know which one is your favorite. If these don't all sell at market, they will be available on my website eventually, but I'm just so happy with how they all turned out. This process is always rewarding of upcycling quilts into something that so many other people can enjoy. But let me know your guys' thoughts. Which quilt was your favorite? Which products are your favorite? And with that, I'll see y'all in my next one. Mwah. Bye.